So, John and Betty Stam's story is both tragic and inspiring. Andrew, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate you having me.
What drew you to their lives and made you want to share their story with the world?
Well, one of my great grandfathers through marriage was John Stam's brother. So, John's younger brother, Cornelius Stam, again, was one of my great grandfathers. And so I had this familial connection, and I grew up calling Cornelius Grandpa Stam as a young boy. He passed away when I was 5 years old, but Um, and I talk about it in the preface of the book, my whole family connection, and there's some really interesting stuff.
So now they met at Moody Bible Institute, right?
Yes,
College, and so they became missionaries in China.
yes.
China is got to be the mission field there, the hardest place to try to talk to people about Jesus and to minister to people, so what surprised you most about their journey to China or their mission work?
I think their faithfulness. I mean, they were just so, yeah, I mean, China at the time and even China today, it's never been a country that's been receptive to the gospel.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's just really their faithfulness and wanting to serve the Chinese people as as one, as a married couple. That ultimately drove them, and it was just their heart for the people there. So you had mentioned kind of just the impact, almost a century later. It's been 90 years now. Later on, then, after they had passed, and again, they were married in October of 1933, and in December of 1934, John and Betty were very involved in church planting, and they did a lot of. John would do a lot of street preaching and handing out gospel tracts. And in on December 6th of 1934, they had recently moved it to a new city, and that city was overrun by communist bandit soldiers of the Red Army. And so John and Betty and their 3-month-old daughter Helen were captured and held for ransom.
Mm.
They were moved to another town 2 mornings later, and John and Betty were both beheaded by the soldiers, and their 3-month-old daughter, lived through all of it. It became a national news story across the globe that one, these two American missionaries, both from Moody, a very prominent school, even at that time, um, that that something so tragic would happen to them and something so horrible. And
Mm.
then news of, what happened to the daughter, how, she's missing. And so John and Betty's daughter Helen was eventually rescued the next day after their martyrdom. They were martyred on December 8th, and then Helen was rescued about 30 hours later on December 9th by a Chinese pastor who is friends with the Stams. So it was such a big story about their faithfulness and how God ultimately did provide for this child. It reached so many people that their
Mhm.
story encouraged and inspired many in America and abroad to just become missionaries and serve where they can.
How did their faith impact those around them, both during their lives and after their deaths?
While John and Betty Stam were still alive, they were very much involved in student ministry at their colleges. John's father ran a mission organization back in Patterson called Star of Hope Mission. And it was at the time, it was a very famous place where a lot of preachers and theologians would come and speak. And the Stam family they'd be introduced to all these different kind of big names at the time and these writers. And so I know that their family ministry back in Patterson had a great impact on that community, and all the Stam children growing up had a big impact on their faith. So Betty was very interested in poetry and wrote a lot. And so in the book, I'm able to use some of her poems to help tell the story, and she shared a lot of her personal experiences.
Mhm.
Um, based on what she went through in life.
Mhm. Which one stood out for you?
There's one that's called Open My Eyes that was found actually after they had died. It was found in their abandoned home after it was taken over by the soldiers, but the cook and maid who had helped with this, who lived with the Stams, found this crinkled piece of paper. It was just, it's an incredible, it's only, I think, three stanzas, but three stanzas. So it's called Open My Eyes. Open my eyes that I may see this one and that one needing thee. Hearts that are dumb, unsatisfied, lives that are dead for whom Christ died. Open my eyes in sympathy, clear into man's deep soul to see, wise with thy wisdom to discern, and with thy heart of love to yearn. Open my eyes in power, I pray. Give me the strength to speak today. Someone to bring, dear Lord, to thee. Use me, O Lord, use even me. Yeah, that's just one that really stuck out to me. And she wrote that as a freshman at Moody Bible Institute.
What role did their sacrifice play in the spread of the gospel in China, since you're talking about all this?
We'll ultimately never know, I think. And it's just one of those things. But many of John and Betty's missionary friends and people with China Inland Mission testified afterward to their story became so well known, especially in the Anhui province where they served. Their names were known among almost every person there, even if they didn't know the gospel. It's like you heard about this American couple that were killed, and then that was a way that people could witness to them that they came to serve you. They came to preach the good news for the people of China, and so. I know that just many of the people there were introduced to the gospel through their story, and I don't know how much of that even till to today, because again, I don't know what it's like in China today. I just it's so hard to say if the Stam name still resonates as it did back in the 1930s and 40s, but in China that is. But I do know that many Chinese Christians are familiar with the Stam name. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm just very encouraged by it.
Yeah, they laid down so many seeds while they were there, left so much behind them, right? And it's so amazing. So, how has sharing their story changed your perspective on faith, their sacrifice or calling?
I'm still trying to grasp it because it's so. I'm about the age. I mean, I'm in my mid 20s, so I'm about the age, when John and Betty went to China, and I'm thinking, okay, where am I at in my own life, in my own faith? I don't see myself as being an overseas missionary, but God put it upon my heart to share their story, and so I'm grateful for God using those seeds that He planted, and all those associated with their story that they helped tell to bring me to this point. And I'm grateful that God put Cornelia Stam in my own family's life for whatever reason. Maybe it was to share this book and this story for a new generation, but they've definitely impacted my own faith and wanting to just be obedient wherever God is going to call me to. And I'm still very encouraged by their story, and just grateful to God for allowing me to share it.
Well, you can get the book By Life or by Death, The Life and Legacy of John and Betty Stam. You can get that book at Moody Publishers, or I would believe like any bookstore. Andrew, what would you like to leave my audience with today?
I'd like to leave your audience with, if you don't know the Stam story, I'd encourage you to check it out. Even if it's not through my book, just go on the internet and look up John and Betty Stam, because I guarantee, even if you don't know the names John and Betty Stam, I guarantee Elizabeth Elliot. I guarantee probably Pastor Chuck Smith or Billy and Ruth Graham, and those were all people that the Stam story impacted. So I hope that people can be encouraged by that, and ultimately just be faithful to their calling in life wherever they're led.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this interview, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Put them in the comments below. Until next time, let's give all glory and honor to King Jesus.